Christian parenting.
The goal of today's episode is to not heap any type of shame on you for feeling like you don't enjoy homeschool. Listen, I'm pretty sure we have all been there. I have been there. And honestly, I think if there's a homeschool mom who's, let's just say, at least a few years into it, and you say, I have never not loved every moment of homeschool, she's lying to you. And we're not liars here. We tell the truth, and that's an important thing. But right now you're just saying, I don't like homeschool. And I'm going to say that's good to admit. We don't want to stay there. And so the point of today's episode is to just really have an honest conversation. And my hope and my prayer is that I can give you some guidance. But to be honest, you're just going to have to do some of this work yourself. And so today's episode, I have a couple of different sections, like boxes, that we're going to put in some of my ideas. And then it's going to be up to you to walk away from this episode and just do the hard and the heart work that you'll need to in order to get to the point, because I really want you to like homeschool. We don't always have to love it. We don't always love everything that we're doing. Do we always love scrubbing the toilets? Do we love making every meal? No, we don't, but we just do it. So there's a hint of one of the points I'm going to make. So let's get into today's episode. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast. I am your host, Leigh Nguyen, and here we are, middle of August. I think a lot of us have started homeschool, and I know that there's even public schools and private schools that have started in different parts of the country. I live in the Northeast. We don't start now because they just got out late, but homeschool, yes, you can start whenever you want. If you have been thinking about Little by Little Homeschool Conference, here is the bug I'm going to plug into you right now. The conference is in just a little over a month. However, ticket sales close on Friday, September 4th. So if you have been thinking about it, grab your ticket now so that you don't forget. Now let's get into today's episode that I have entitled, Don't Like to Homeschool? How to Change Your Mind. Let's get started on it. Today I'm going to offer you 3 different compartments or boxes that will say, for the reasons why you don't like to homeschool. Now, you might take a little bit from each one, or you might find yourself in all 3 of these different compartments. So stay with me here. I'm going to have a couple of points in each of these different compartments, these different boxes. The first one is we're going to just pull back the view. We're not going to get into the tactical of homeschool because, yes, there are some little things that you might be doing that are really adding to this feeling of not liking to homeschool. But let's take a high view right now. And I want to say that I find this a lot with moms with young children. If your kids are young, and there is just a lot. You might just say, I don't like homeschool because you are just thinking about everything. You are thinking about the fact that your kids are just there and it's overwhelming. Just maybe the task of making sure everybody gets their teeth brushed in a day is just one more thing, and you add so much onto it. And so if you I know I've talked to many moms who are like, I have 4 kids under the age of 5. Well, then you're probably not really homeschooling. But say your oldest is maybe 7 or 8 and your youngest is a baby, and somewhere in there you have 3, 4, 5, 6 kids. I don't know what's physically possible there. Well, whatever's physically possible, that might be your limit there. But if your kids are young, I want to remind you yet again, and you might roll your eyes, but this will not always be the season that you are in. I wish that someone had said that to me. I didn't have many resources. I didn't really have many people speaking into me. And sometimes if they did, honestly, I'd be like, yeah, that's easy for you to say. You have kids who will help out with all the chores, and you're not wiping everybody's bum, and they can take care of themselves. And if they have stinky armpits, that's their problem. And they're the one that everyone's going to be like, ew, your armpits stink. But when they're all young, you're like, I'm kind of responsible. If my kid stinks, it's my fault, not necessarily their fault. So yeah, it's easy for you to say that, but you will get to the point. I didn't think I'd be at this point as a mother. I just was like, it'll never happen. And here I am with 3 homeschool graduates, and not necessarily an empty nest, but kind of living a little bit like an empty nest, but they're still at home. It's a very odd season. It's taken me some time to get used to, and there's some things that I have to work on right now. And I know that this season that I'm in won't always be the season that I'm in. Some of the challenges that I face right now will not be the challenges in the future. And so the same for you. If your kids are young, remember, your job is beyond keeping them alive, you want them to thrive as well. We want you to thrive as well. And that needs to be a priority. The second part of this high-level compartment is I want you to adjust the way you look at homeschool. Our culture separates school from parenting, right? The kids get on the bus and that's school. They come home and they have some homework and that you are doing as a parent. But ultimately, you're not responsible for whether they really do get that long division. They understand how to do it. And what I'm told is the math they're doing is not the math that we grew up in. And those parents are trying to figure out the new math. They're like, wait a minute, what is going on? And funny, completely unrelated, well, maybe semi-unrelated. My 21-year-old son was helping out in the children's ministry. And this one kid in there, he was, I think, it might have been like first grade or second grade or something. But this child really likes doing long division. And so this child said to my son, can you make a long division problem? And my son was watching. He's like, what are you doing? I don't understand. Like, how is that? Because I taught my kids how to do, when they were younger and learning this is when the Common Core and all this new stuff came in. And I rejected it fully. And we went old school. And he's just looking at this kid like, what are you doing? And the kid was kind of trying to explain it. And then he said, okay, you do the same math problem as me. I'm going to make up a math problem and we're both going to do it. I'm going to do it my way and you're going to do it your way. And the kid's mind was kind of blown by the way that my son was doing it. So anyway, let's go back to my point here, that our culture separates school from parenting. However, homeschool is not separate. And sometimes that is actually the heart of the issue. And you say to yourself, it'd be so much easier if I could just send them off to school to do the school and I wouldn't have that responsibility. And right there, ding, 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 you might not like homeschool because you're feeling that pressure. You're saying to yourself, I am responsible for this. This is a lot on my shoulders. This is really stressful. And that's maybe some work also. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But that's maybe something to really dive into. If me saying that to you, you're like, it would be easier to send them off to school. Not really. There's pros and cons to everything, but you are homeschooling because you believe and you feel that it is the best way to educate your kids. And so in that respect, yeah, it might be easier because you don't have to take on that responsibility. But how about we start to do some work and we start to understand what actually education is, right? And then we start to see that education doesn't have to be separated out. It is one and the same when we home educate. We are not just doing our subjects. We are not just doing our homeschool state regulations. We are homeschooling the entire child. And that includes their head, yes, and their heart, their body, their spirit, everything, their soul. That's what we are homeschooling. We are not just filling their mind with information. Some kids love information. They just want to continue to consume it. Then let that child go ahead and do that. And it's figuring out, how does my child actually process information? How do they learn things? And that's a whole other episode right there. But let's get now into the compartment here, the box of actual homeschool, of the tactical, practical things to do in order to hopefully get you to the point where you actually like homeschool. That's what I want. I want you to like homeschool. I don't want you to dread it every day. There's always going to be things that we're not looking forward to. But as adults, we say, I got to put my big girl pants on and I got to do it anyway. That's a hint for the end of this episode. The first thing I want to mention when it comes to the homeschool compartment here is maybe your approach is wrong. Maybe, I'm just going to throw this out there, maybe you're coming in just very militantly about it. And you're like, we have to do this, and because that's what you think that you have to do. But really, your heart and you're just the way that you operate in other areas of life, you're a lot more laid back. You are a lot more, it doesn't jive. You are trying to homeschool in a way that doesn't jive with you and your personality. Or maybe your approach is wrong because it's how maybe you want to do it, but your kids, it isn't clicking with them. And so you might say, yeah, I like homeschool because I like this way of homeschooling, but it's just not working with the kids. So therefore it kind of comes, you're like, it's frustrating. They're pushing back on everything. And that can cause you not to like homeschool. So maybe your approach is wrong to homeschool. And if you're saying, I'm not quite sure, what is my approach? Again, we're going to talk about your homeschool blueprint. I want you to go check that out. Okay, friend? How about when it comes to the homeschool, Sometimes we just need to put aside all the things we think we need to do. You might say, oh, I need to be doing science experiments at least once a week or a couple times a month, but you hate science experiments. Listen, I tried a curriculum one time because I was like, I have a kid that loves science experiments, and we lasted a few months and it just kind of petered out because I had zero enthusiasm. And to be honest, this was a child that I would kind of go over the lesson and he would tell me exactly how the experiment was going to end because he just theoretically knew how it was going to end. And I was like, why am I collecting all these random things to do these experiments if you already know? And sometimes I do it anyway just to show him this is actually the process. But anyway, maybe you just need to focus on your language arts and your math. Put aside those other things that you think that you need to do, the arts and the crafts and all those things. Listen, my kids did lots of arts and crafts, and we did do some specific art curriculum. But a lot of the crafting and the extra stuff they did, I just supplied them with a place and resources and let them have at it. And I counted that as their school, as their art. Very simple, right? How about maybe let them take a little responsibility for some of that other stuff, but you focus on accomplishing the language arts and the math. What is the language arts? That is reading and writing. Now, writing in the younger ages is actually just learning how to write. And as they get older, it's actually learning how to put words together, sentences, paragraphs, maybe writing short stories, that kind of stuff. Spelling for the younger ages, vocabulary for the older ages, but a lot of reading. Reading for the younger ages is actually just learning how to read. The older ages is actually just reading. And then you can come in and work on their reading comprehension. I've had kids who just kind of like fly through books, but have no idea actually what they read, just so they could check it off and say, I read this book. And then you have the math, and that's pretty straightforward, depending upon the age, finding a resource that works with them. Once they can do that math, you just keep building on the math, you keep building on the language arts. The rest of the subjects, you can fill them in as time warrants. Now, maybe your kids are young, and you might say, okay, I'm just going to focus on the ones who actually are school age. We're going to focus on the language arts and the math. The rest are just going to play. And again, you're not going to be in that season forever. They'll all start to grow up. The little ones will start to get a little bit older, and you'll be able to add in some more things. And again, not every single subject has to be so hardcore. Remember my story about the arts and crafts? I counted that as their art. Another thing that you can do to make you hopefully get yourself to the point that you like homeschool is add things that you like into their homeschool. Maybe you really do love the art and you say, you know what, we're going to do language arts, math, and then we are going to do art. You enjoy maybe painting and clay sculptures, arts and crafts and all that kind of stuff. You don't mind the glitter and the beads and all the things and the paper clippings and everything. You don't mind that. You like it. Include that into your home education. Do you really like history? Include that into your home education. I learned so much with homeschool because I included things that I wanted to learn about as well, especially in high school. I was actually just messaging someone on Instagram about something, and I just told her, I said, yeah, in high school, we really leaned into eschatology, the study of end times and Revelation, because I was actually really curious and had never actually done a deep study on my own. I just kind of regurgitated what I was told as I grew up and what I believed from movies and books. And after studying it, my perspective changed. And I was like, we are doing this as part of homeschool. And I didn't tell them what they have to think, what they have to believe. And we had a lot of conversations. And this is why I think this. And, okay, well, I can see this. We listened to podcasts and read books. And I included something. And I was honestly excited every day to do a little bit more of our reading and a little bit more of our studying of eschatology. You figure out what are something that you like and include that in it. Now, I'm going to go through real quick here and give you some realistic changes to make. And I want you to write these down and then consider. I probably have podcast episodes about every single one of these. So you can go back and you can go and search for those. The first is to create a rhythm to your day, and then you have to stick with it. What if you have a set time to be done each day? That way you know you can be done at a certain time, and then you have that time to maybe afterwards to work on. Maybe you have some free time, maybe you have hobbies, or there's chores, or there's errands, or whatever it is. Having a set time that you are done each day. If you have young kids, and I'm going to add, even if they aren't young kids, what if you add in some type of rest time after lunch? This is something that we often do when we have babies, obviously. They're taking a nap, and it's easy as older kids, but I don't know if I've ever shared this, but I made my kids even, I'm not going to say high school and stuff, but even up through middle school, I know it sounds kind of weird to say, that we all just took a rest time, an hour or two in the afternoon, and it didn't mean that they were confined to their bed and they had to sleep. No, it was just quiet time in their rooms, maybe be quiet time. They might say, oh, can I go outside and hang up my hammock, and I want to swing in my hammock and I want to read a book. Great. That we all just had a little bit of margin in the day to rest our minds and our hearts, and to maybe dig a little bit into our introvertedness and just have a little bit of space. Another idea is to consider doing 4-day school weeks. And then that 5th day, maybe that's a day that you catch up around the house. Maybe it's a field trip day. Maybe it is just a relaxing day. You decide what it's going to look like, but consider possibly doing a 4-day school week if 5 days you're just like, I'm burned out by the end of that. Last thing in this section that I want to talk about, practical tips with it. And so another realistic idea is to stop making everything a lesson. If your kids want to come up and tell you something random that they learned about a bird or a certain type of rock or a tree or their favorite cartoon, whatever it is, just let them tell you those random things that they are learning or that they're thinking, and just listen. You don't have to create a lesson about everything. When we're so high strung and have to create everything some type of lesson, then our kids are going to get burned out by it too. And obviously then you are too. Let's now lean into the spiritual aspect of this. And I want to encourage you that if you are saying, I don't like to homeschool, let God refine your attitude and your perspective about it. Ask Him for a heart change. However, He's not going to do it alone. You need to take an active part in the process. Just say, God, you can cry out to Him. Sometimes those tears are actually really helpful. I mean, scientifically, they say that just letting that out, those emotions, the hormones out, I often find myself that I'm just like, you just had this so bottled up. Just cry. Just let it out. And you know what? I feel so much better afterwards. So maybe you just need to pour out some tears over this, thinking that you don't like to homeschool. And ask God just to refine your attitude. Be daily in His Word, reading maybe the Psalms that are going to encourage you, different devotionals. Maybe there's blogs that are written by homeschool moms and they have some really great spiritual guidance for you. Do that. Read those daily. But let God refine your attitude. Admit that you have a bad attitude about homeschool and ask Him for a heart change, and then just surrender it. Allow Him to make those changes. It's not going to be like snap your fingers and the next day you're going to be like, I love homeschool. It's the best thing ever. Most likely that's not going to happen, because those heart changes happen over time. It's a habit. It's a new frame of mind. Read, not Revelation, because I talked about it before, Romans 12:2. Let God transform your heart. Let Him change your mind about homeschool. Final thing I want to say is that as an adult, we sometimes just need to do the right thing. The right thing for your children, you have decided, is to homeschool them, and you just need to do it, no matter where you are with your attitude. Allowing God to sanctify you, to refine you in this process. But while you are going through that process, you can't say, well, once I get to the point of really liking homeschool, then I'll homeschool. No, you're going to homeschool through the process of it. I want to read you a quote by Charles Spurgeon before I close us out. He said, "You must impart to the young your own soul. You must feel as if the ruin of that child would be your own ruin." I feel like that too. I don't want to do anything that's going to ruin. I'm just going to pour out everything. And I want to just give them everything. And I want you just to give them everything. And you might just say, you know what, I don't like homeschool right now, but I'm going to do it anyway. We really need that in our culture and society. We're so much like, well, I don't like to do that, so I'm not going to do that. No. As parents, you realize that baby crying at 2 a.m., we love them. Do we like having to get up again? Because they're up again at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. We don't like it, but we do it. We do it anyway because that is the right thing to do for our child. You might not like homeschooling right now, but you do it anyway. And during that process, you're praying for God to refine you and to change your attitude and your perspective. And so just saying, you know what? I'm going to give it my all. These years are going to pass by anyway. Why not homeschool? Why not do it to the best of your ability, even if you don't love it every day? Because I can almost guarantee at the end, you'll look back and you'll say, I'm so glad I homeschooled. Even on those days that I didn't like to, even in those years that maybe I didn't like to, I did it anyway. And I really, my heart truly wants you to create a love of homeschool, to see the goodness in what you are doing and the worthiness of these years and this time that you are spent doing it. And I really do want to encourage you to go over and check out your homeschool blueprint. We're going to talk about these tactical things. We're also going to, before that, create that love of learning, to create that perspective that you need. And then we'll start putting, the wheels on the wagon, and we'll start looking at the different methods. We'll start looking at the curriculum and how does your day actually look. I want to encourage you to go look at that at littlebylittlehomeschool.com/blueprint. I would love to link arms with you and get you to the point of not just liking homeschool, but loving it. Thanks for being here for today's episode, and I will see you back here on Thursday.